Hi, so my name is Leisha and welcome to Trashy Science. And today we're going to be talking about plastic pollution. And in particular, we're going to be talking about microplastics. So here I've collected some macroplastics. And macroplastics are the plastics that are bigger than 5 millimeters. And this is a plastic bag that I've actually collected off a beach in Sydney. And you can already see how much it's degraded and how easy it is for it to fragment into tiny microplastics. Microplastics are defined as any piece of plastic that is less than 5 millimeters in diameter. These ones here are our microplastics, and over here we have some macroplastics. So if you imagine that a piece of plastic was just a sponge, they soak up all of the toxins in the water. Here we have a sponge and some water. And the colours here are representing the different toxins that could be present in the ocean. If we were to put the sponge in, we could see that all of the colours are being soaked up into the sponge, and all of these toxins are now in the sponge. One study in Japan actually discovered that one piece of plastic can be up to 1 million times more toxic than the surrounding seawater. So where this gets really scary is when we start to look at the food chain. Here we have a bit of red felt that's here to represent fish eggs, which are kind of on the bottom of the food chain. So here we have a little small fish who's going to come along and eat these eggs. But what happens is when there are microplastics around, these nurdles, which are pre-production pellets, actually get mistaken as fish eggs. So these little fish will accidentally consume plastic. And as they accidentally consume this plastic, they're accumulating it in their system. And then we start to move up the food chain, where we have a bigger fish that comes along to eat the smaller fish. And because this smaller fish has eaten plastic, this larger fish is also ingesting plastic. And then we're going to move up the food chain once more to an even bigger fish that consumes a lot more fish, which also means that it's consuming more plastic. So this little fella here will consume all of this plastic here. And this is a really big problem because the plastic is bioaccumulating. So what this means is that the concentration levels of plastic are getting higher as we move up the food chain. So you might be wondering why it matters if fish are eating plastic. What you have to remember is the food chain in the ocean extends far beyond the ocean, and in fact humans are at the top of this food chain. So remember that our microplastics act like sponges, soaking up some of the chemicals that are present in our ocean. Now imagine if we're eating these fish that have consumed these plastics. There's a real threat to our human health. And a really good example of this is the mercury poisoning, and how humans were at the top of the food chain in eating seafood that were contaminated by mercury. While more research is necessary to discover the full extent of the threat of plastics, there's no harm in reducing our plastic consumption.